This is the story of a boy revisiting and reconsidering his hatred for a certain girl he knows. Whether or not this exercise proves to be beneficial for their relationship is yet to be seen, but there's one thing we know for sure. This boy is actually me, and the girl is a fictional character. Wow, I can hear you saying. This just went from interesting and kind of endearing to really sad and pathetic. Well, to that I say, ouch. But this is also a rare opportunity for me. The list of things I dislike about Clannad is very small, and the list of things I might actually change my mind on is even smaller. See, I really didn't care for Tomoyo's story when I first read it a couple years ago. I thought the writing was weird, the characters inconsistent, and the themes unappealing. It could be because there are some real problems with this route that I could only put into words after replaying it. It could be because I was a stupid dum-dum and didn't understand what it was trying to do. Or there's the most probable outcome. I hated this route because somebody at Key thought it was okay to put a character called Tomoya and one called Tomoyo in the same story. Pro tip, if you ever want to give a YouTuber a panic attack, give them two names that sound exactly the fucking same and then tell them to put them in a script 50 times each. You're lucky you're my favorite, Clannad. Lucky might not even begin to cover it, especially since the prep work required to get the most out of this route is absurd. It's no coincidence that this is one of the last routes I'm covering in this series. You need to make sure you have Masai and Komura's routes done. The former you need for a light orb, and the latter of which I haven't even covered yet, but don't worry, we'll be getting to him in due time. You also need to be buddy-buddy with Nagisa for a few days, or else you'll just straight up fail the route with no warning. And if you want a secret achievement, you better be ready to do the baseball route all over again and talk to as many people as possible. This route is the main reason why I advise people to go into this game loosely following a guide, because no matter how thorough of a player you are, you're going to miss something your first time through. So that was immediately off-putting to me. And as I pressed on regardless, I learned that this was just the beginning of my grievances with this route. Things start out innocently enough, with a daily reminder that Sunohara is a stupid, stupid man.
Ooh! Are you pretty dog too? It's miracle!
He and Tomoya witness Tomoyo decimate a group of bikers trespassing on school grounds, and he gets the idea that the whole thing was an act, because there's no way that a girl can be stronger than a guy. What the fuck? Go outside, dude. These thoughts end up costing him dearly, as for the next few days he gets the crap kicked out of him by Tomoyo while Tomoya watches from the sidelines. Turns out that fight was legit, and our prim and proper Miss Excellent here has a bleak past full of violence and, more violence, Jesus. The Sunohara bits are as funny as they always are, with lines like the iconic, "Even a Buddhist master can't win against a surprise attack," splitting my sides open. But what really kicks the plot off here is how she interacts with Tomoya. She seems very relaxed around him, saying that the vibe he gives off makes him easy to talk to. The brief exchanges they have between Sunohara's beatings gave me the sense that she was always trying to figure him out. And I suppose she must have liked what she noticed, because from here, things escalate at a brisk pace. After the reason behind Sunohara's harassment gets revealed to Tomoyo, she gets super self-conscious and tells Tomoya to touch her chest to prove she's a girl. He obviously refuses, opting to be sensible about things and just believe her. Then there's the scene where he protects her from being hounded by the judo club to join up with them. As he leads her away by the hand, he tells her she should clear up this misunderstanding whenever she can. She says, "Nah, I don't mind if you don't," then abruptly changes the conversation by saying, "We get along quite well." What? Do we? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. At this point, things were starting to get very jarring for me. I decided that if I was still confused after the route, I would give Tomoyo After a look to clarify some things. It's a sequel to her route, released as a standalone visual novel in 2005. But once I told a friend my plan, he begged me not to use the Steam version, but instead use a different copy of the game he'd acquire for me. I thought that was fine, especially since I don't even know if I'll need it. Still hasn't gotten back to me though. I wonder when that'll happen. Anyways, as they're walking home, Tomoyo's all like, "Oh, by the way, you'd better stay glued to me just in case those judo guys come back," and it's like, okay. Then she says, and I quote, "Please protect me while looking incredibly cool just like before." Okay, stop. To provide some context for the headspace I was in when I first read this route, I was just getting into anime as a medium. I had seen K-On!, Angel Beats, Haruhi, and maybe like 5 to 10 other shows. I was slowly descending into the abyss that was anime, and as I slid down, I was wary to avoid certain pitfalls. Look, you and I both know that anime has some very strange tropes, and the last thing I wanted to do was wake up one day and realize that I was into some weird shit. So when Tomoyo here was all like, "Oh my god, you're so big and handsome and strong and never leave my side and sugoi," my immediate thought was this is cheap, pandering wish fulfillment and I will not be enticed as so many have before, including one of my best friends.
Damn, she's got blue eyes. That's actually kind of hot.
You need to relax.
And as the route continued, this resentment only grew. The two of them end up getting together in spite of their clearly conflicting ideals. Tomoyo has aspirations of joining the student council, and Tomoya is the delinquent with an irrational distaste for anyone involved with the school. However, we still hear stuff like God may have left you here specifically for me as my eternal lover. Lady, you have been dating for 2 days. And then they start going at it in the cafeteria, and then it cuts to the evening, and she's all like, "Oh, I can't believe we were thumb wrestling with our tongues for that long, oh my god." And then they break up because Tomoya's way of life was holding her back, which is true, and then they just get back together at the end. You know, I didn't follow much of the discussion surrounding this game when I first played it, but from what little I read, it was clear to me that many people found this scene to be very impactful. I mean, it was nice to see them get back together, but I felt like their relationship was so awkward and forced that it cheapened the moment. And there you go, that's the route. A special thanks to patrons, which could be you one day, or yeah. This was how I viewed Tomoyo's route when I first played it. I didn't think it was bad, but out of all of Clannad's routes, I believed it was the weakest. And the reason why I gave you context about my mindset going into it is because this is a classic case of some stupid mental barrier barring me from appreciating a story. It's not a foreign problem for me, and I'm sure that can be said for many of you as well. For example, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I started watching a show called Bocchi the Rock. It's a musical slice of life starring an introvert with social anxiety who wants to play in a band. My first thought was, wow, what a cool trope. I'm sure that'll make this show super popular with all its hashtag relatable moments. I think I'll pass. And in doing so, I completely neglected the stellar writing, beautiful animation, genuinely funny jokes, great music, heartwarming moments, and, to my past self's dismay, deeply relatable characters. This is what happens when I fixate my mind on one perceived flaw and let it ruin the entire thing for me, failing to realize how my own preconceptions might be coloring my experience. I stumbled across arguably the best show I watched all year, and I dropped it. So, before we go back to Tomoyo, here's a quick word of advice from me to me. Get the fuck over yourself and give everything a fair chance. While Tomoyo's route may still be the weakest route of the main 5 in my eyes, I find it to be a unique and well thought out addition to this collection of some of my favorite stories. First things first, Tomoyo herself. She plays off of Tomoya and Sunohara really well. There's a lot of sass and sarcasm in her words, and she's very good at responding to it on the receiving end. However, if she's teased about something she's self-conscious about, she drops her IQ down to room temperature and takes it super literally. Like when Tomoya does the whole "let's break up" joke after he realizes that dating Tomoyo means waking up early every morning. Instead of firing back with something like, "How about thanks for waking me up, jackass?" she's all like, "What? No, anything but that." It's little details like this that make a character endearing. There's this plot crucial detail disguised as a running joke where Tomoyo behaves like a no-nonsense mother to Tomoya despite the fact that she's younger than him. It comes across in scenes like this one where she tells him not to eat in the halls, so he tries to shove his bread in his mouth in defiance, only to end up with her hand in his mouth because she's just too quick. There's the bit where he gets dragged off to school by her so they can make it on time. As they reach the gate with seconds to spare, Tomoyo inquires about his classroom. "Where's your classroom?" "I don't know." How do you not know? That one always puts a smile on my face. And when he's late the next day, she confronts him about it. He tries to weasel his way out of a confession, but she just says she'll ask one of his classmates if he was here all day or not. With his back against the wall, Tomoyo channels his inner 6-year-old and says this: "Yeah, I'm late, and is that so bad? You ask me whether it's bad, but I can't give an answer other than yes, it's bad." This is a fun character, okay? Sure, she's not as entertaining as Kyo, who ironically steals the show in a few scenes like she always does, but she's more than capable of holding your attention to the end credits. And I'll say, one thing she has over Kyo, just one, sorry I'm so biased, is her relationship with Sunohara. Sure, 70% of the time it's just Sunohara doing a dumb thing and getting kicked then insulted. However, that opens the door for the euphoric rush of seeing two characters who don't really get along on a surface level showing glimpses of respect and kindness towards each other. I talked about this in the Dragon Maid video. I think this is my narrative fetish. Like when they go to the cafe and Tomoyo makes up this story about how Sunohara brought her here because he secretly wanted to go to a cafe with a girl, and she's all like, "You can consider me a friend of yours." I'm just like, man, I kinda wish that this was what the end of this route looked like. And of course, Sunohara once again earns his bro status when shit hits the fan in this route. Sensing the tension building between these two as Tomoyo starts distancing himself, he lies about being a rich model to them and says he's going to take them out and buy them food. He's always disguising genuine efforts to cheer his friends up behind his usual goofy antics, and I love him for it. Also, I lied, there is one other thing that Tomoyo has over Kyo, and that's her interactions with this man. I mentioned him once in the baseball route and not really again, because he doesn't play much of a role in any route other than Nagasa's, except this one. If you'll remember, Tomoyo and his dad really don't get along. He's had a grudge against his old man ever since his shoulder was dislocated during a routine fight with him, causing them to become more distant as time has gone on. This is the household that Tomoyo stumbles into as she continues to insert herself in Tomoyo's life. After an incident where he sprints out of the house at the mere sight of his father, she finds him messing around at Sunohara's dorm and asks him what happened, worried that this was all her fault. It wasn't, not at all, but can you blame her for thinking so when she sat down and had a nice breakfast with his dad after he left? He didn't seem like the boogeyman Tomoyo built him up as at all, but that's not to suggest that there isn't a valid reason for his bitterness. It opens the door to the possibility that this isn't just our one-dimensional bad father villain, but instead this is a complicated situation that we don't have all the facts for. Something that hopefully the game will conclude in a satisfying way, wink wink. Recognizing this, Tomoyo tells him, "I'm sure that only you know the pain you feel," choosing to be honest rather than lie by saying something disingenuous like "I understand." This is a decision that Tomoyo respects, and it's proof that Tomoyo coming into his life was undeniably a good thing, which makes what comes next all the more heartbreaking. The word of the day is expectations. The expectations people have for you, the expectations you have for yourself, and most importantly, how these expectations affect the people around you are ideas that I find to be inseparable from this route's climax. I mocked Tomoyo's assertion that she and Tomoyo are alike a bit ago, but in truth, they are similar in many ways. The way they almost immediately feel comfortable around each other, their shared history of being rebellious miscreants, and the unique way in which their personalities complement each other paints the simple picture of two kindred spirits coming together. The distinction between them, however, is the expectations of what they can attain. Tomoyo reformed herself for the sake of her family, and her aptitude, can-do attitude, as well as her proper demeanor ensured that the world would always see her as a winner. She's the model student, the easy hire, the girl who can achieve anything she sets her mind to. Tomoyo, on the other hand, is the exact opposite, the delinquent, the loafer, Mr. Thank God I'm not that guy. He goes to a well-renowned prep school and has the distinction of being one of the few students enrolled who can't make ends meet. His peers have made a habit out of always assuming the worst in him. Take this scene where a faculty member automatically assumes that Tomoyo is in the teacher's room for sexual harassment, an act that he has zero precedent of committing. So imagine how hard this teacher and the rest of the world shit the bed when their little prodigy began to associate with this this guy. Teachers discuss the situation with both of them frequently, flat out saying that Tomoyo is holding her back and should be forgotten. Students who are interested in Tomoyo's growth as a person tell him to break up with her. Others vandalize posters for her student council campaign just because they're together. All of these actions collectively scribble down a message which is then hand-delivered to Tomoyo. You are going to cause her to fail in life because you're you. Do not drag her down with you. I can only imagine how fun it must be to hear that, given the fact that this is a guy who we know already thinks very little of himself. You know, I will agree with one thing my past self said during his first playthrough. This is wish fulfillment, and it was all done to make this guy and the player feel all the more inadequate during this part of the route. When Tomoyo seriously considers breaking up with Tomoyo despite her saying that everything is fine, it's hard to not see where he's coming from. She constantly shirks her responsibilities as student council president to be with him, something that negatively affects her peers and everyone's perceptions of her. Not to mention, there's her goal of preventing the sakura trees on the hill to school from being cut down, as they're very special to both her and her brother. That dream being crushed is one of the reasons Tomoyo brings up as he tells Tomoyo he wants to break up with her. As she tells him over and over again that she can make time for both in vain, Tomoyo tells her that what he felt for her wasn't love. All he ever wants to do is just play around. That sounds in character, right? Like something only a true delinquent would say? Well, regardless, it works. And as Tomoyo walks away, Tomoyo realizes that what he felt truly was love. The story is awfully quick to contradict him, almost as if there's a clear distinction between his perceived self and who he truly is. Sunohara is quick to recognize Tomoyo's fake "this was for the best" attitude and attempts to comfort him in the same way he always does, by goofing off and giving him something to laugh at. But as you all know, things change. The cold winds of winter roll in to signify that graduation is approaching, and it's long since been time to consider what comes next. Sunohara heads back to his hometown to find a job like he promised his parents, something Tomoyo can respect, seeing as how he's always been slow to accept change. But time marches forward whether you're ready or not, so Tomoyo makes his way to the job hunting room at school. Nobody else is there seeking help but him. He doubts that anyone has ever needed to come here. The teacher running the service bluntly explains the fruits of his years of loafing and unsatisfactory behavior. Employers simply don't care about the leftovers from a prestigious school, and the way you are as a person will probably be off-putting. But don't give up regardless. You'll eventually find a job you can come to terms with. Nice wording there, Chief. As someone who's currently filling out application after application in preparation for graduation, the thought of being told that my life up to this point has led to a forced compromise is absolutely horrifying. Tomoyo searches for some jobs on his own, but unfortunately all of his hopes were crushed. He ends up accepting some manual labor job the teacher suggested to him. He sees it as a sign of things to come and becomes depressed. As he sits in Sunohara's dorm all alone, he wonders if he'll ever find anything in his life from now on. Everything truly important to him, his family, basketball, Tomoyo, even Sunohara, is all buried in the past. Right now, can't things just stay the same? Just after he seals his fate by accepting the job offer, he makes his way back home as snow begins to cover the ground. Walking down the long, winding hill to school, he attempts to comfort himself in vain as it becomes clear how much of a toll his resignation to his expectations has taken on him, and as all hope seems lost, he sees a familiar face waiting for him at the bottom of the hill. Tomoyo tells him that she succeeded in her goal. The sakura trees are not going to be cut down, and when her brother starts high school next year, they'll be able to have that conversation about them they always wanted to have. Well, that's good, if not a little bittersweet. But she continues, saying that achieving this dream took away a lot of time she should have spent by his side. Tomoyo doesn't believe her at first, but soon finds himself in a repeat of the conversation they had months ago. He slips back into the same position he took then, saying that she's much better off without him. Some of you are probably shouting at your phone / monitor / whatever you're watching this on right now, but you gotta understand something. Yes, there is an obvious solution to this this problem. But if the extensive detail I went into explaining the months of inadequacy, guilt, and anxiety that Tomoyo experiences throughout this route are anything to go by, he is the last person who should be making this decision right now. He's going to take up a job he doesn't want. She'll go off to some university far away from here. He'll be working hours a day for scraps in a town that he can never leave. She'll be meeting the expectations of everyone she comes across. He'll always be a failure. She'll always succeed. With the entire world and yourself feeds you the same narrative, I wouldn't blame anyone for believing it, nor would I blame them for not seeing through the endless sea of doubt and drivel to lay their eyes on what truly matters here. If you believe what Clannad believes, that people gain meaning in life through those they interact with and grow close to, then the only thing that matters here is how these two feel. Tomoyo confesses that she still cares for him, even more than before. She tells him she's willing to come to where he is as long as he lets her. Tomoyo gives it some thought, and that same feeling he felt in this very spot months ago returns to him, but this time he'll catch it before it's too late. He still loves Tomoyo. That's one of the few things in his life that hasn't changed, and it never will. So what the fuck are we still doing standing here talking about it? I know now that I didn't like this scene when I first read it because I didn't take into account any of the buildup. Like Tomoyo, my mind drifted to pointless white noise. The vapid expectations I had created clouded my ability to appreciate this route for what it is. So I'm very glad that I was able to give it a second chance. As time passes, we see Tomoyo in work clothes walking up the hill to school to meet Tomoyo. Her little brother is with her today, basking in the fruits of her sister's labor as Tomoyo inches ever closer. The memories they make, the dreams they pursue, and the goals they achieve aren't shown to us from here. It's likely that both of them will need to make compromise after compromise to accommodate their relationship, but the way that they talk to each other in this scene makes it impossible for me to believe that this wasn't for the best. And as Tomoyo walks off to go back to work, he leaves Tomoyo and her brother to have that conversation they always wanted to have under the blooming sakura. So yeah, Tomoyo's pretty great, and sick, the game is ready. Good timing too. I was worried I wouldn't get to talk about Tomoyo after it all, but it looks like... Yeah, so... Tomoyo was always the worst character in Clannad. That's just a joke, by the way. I know Tomoyo After isn't just like that. Play the Steam version if you want it free of H scenes. Alright, enough explaining, bye-bye. Special thanks to Silent Secondary, Mr. Chocolate Salmon, and the rest of my wonderful patrons.